Imagine this for a second. You're scrolling through TikTok, watching a live stream, and then the unthinkable happens, right there on your screen. That's how the world learned about the shocking murder of Valeria Márquez. It sent, well, ripples everywhere, far beyond just her followers. Today, we're doing a deep dive into her story. Valeria Márquez, she was just 23 years old, a Mexican beauty influencer, a model. She owned a salon in Zapopan, Jalisco. You might have seen her online. She won the Miss Rostro pageant back in 2021, a real rising star. Makeup tips, fashion, travel. She shared it all with like hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram and TikTok.
She really had built quite a platform for herself. Very visible.
Totally. So our mission here is to look past those initial shocking headlines. We want to try and unpack the really complex, sometimes conflicting layers around her death. We're looking at all the different theories who might have done this, and maybe even more importantly, why.
Yeah, and we've gathered quite a range of sources. They paint a picture that includes alleged abuse, the very serious possibility of cartel involvement, and it forces us to confront this wider issue of femicide in the region.
We're basically here to help you connect the dots on what is a really intricate and frankly deeply important case.
What's really striking, I think, is how quickly Valeria's death became this kind of flashpoint. It wasn't just the brutality, but the fact it happened so publicly. It really forced these deeper issues, like femicide and cartel influence, right into the spotlight.
Yeah, unavoidable almost.
So we'll guide you through exactly what happened during that incident, look at the different lines of investigation that opened up, and sort of tie it all back to that bigger social picture.
Okay, so let's go back to that day. May 13th, 2025. Valeria's doing her thing, right? Live streaming from her salon, Blossom the Beauty Lounge in Zapopan. And the footage, it's just chilling. It captures those final moments. You see her holding a stuffed pig, and then you hear her say, "They're coming." Then a voice, off camera, asks, "Hey, Val." She just says yes. And then suddenly the audio cuts out. The stream goes silent.
Oh, my God.
Seconds later, she collapses. She's been shot, chest and head. And then for just a moment, someone else appears on screen, grabs her phone, and the stream just ends.
It's horrifying to even describe. And what makes it even more, I don't know, unsettling is that she seemed to feel something was wrong.
Right. She mentioned it earlier in the stream.
Exactly. Earlier in that same live stream, she'd apparently talked about being scared. She said someone had come by the salon earlier, asking for her when she wasn't there, claimed they had a very expensive gift they needed to give her in person.
That sounds ominous.
Totally. And her words, according to the reports, were something like, maybe they were going to kill me. Were they going to come and take me away or what? I'm worried.
So she literally voiced this fear just before it happened. It's like a premonition.
A very clear one. It suggests she felt a specific threat looming,
And the aftermath. Police, paramedics arrived, confirmed her death. But the online reaction, that was something else.
Yeah, talk about the digital age. Her Instagram following just exploded, right?
Yeah.
Went from under 100,000 to almost 260,000 almost overnight.
It was this bizarre mix of genuine shock, support, outrage, but also, let's be honest, a kind of morbid curiosity filling up her comments.
And the official response. The Jalisco State Attorney General's office stepped in immediately. They launched an investigation, crucially, classifying it under a femicide protocol.
Okay, explain that protocol. Why is that specific classification so important here?
It's critical because it signals right away that investigators are looking for gender-related motives. It's not just treated as a standard homicide. It mandates looking deeper into why she was targeted, specifically as a woman. Was it related to her gender, a relationship, something connected to being female in that context? It shifts the whole focus.
Got it. So a public murder, a victim who feared for her life, and an official investigation immediately flagged as potential femicide. But the motive, that's where things get complicated.
Extremely complicated. Our sources point to several different threads, compelling theories that sometimes seem to contradict each other.
Let's start with the one that really seemed to resonate emotionally first. The one linked to that femicide protocol, the possibility of past abuse.
Right. This surfaced mainly through an audio recording. Now, it's important to say this is unverified, that it gained a lot of public attention. It's allegedly Valeria Márquez's voice, describing what sounds like a really disturbing pattern of mental and emotional abuse from an ex-boyfriend.
And the details in that alleged recording, they're really hard to hear. She reportedly talks about him humiliating her, especially about past relationships.
Yeah, the quotes reported are awful. Things like, "He told me I was already too worn. that he didn't like women who had been with too many men,
Oh, God.
and that a lady doesn't go from bed to bed, and I was one of those who did. Just incredibly degrading stuff.
It sounds like intense psychological abuse.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
He allegedly said it disgusted him to think about how many people I had slept with, that she wasn't good enough to introduce to his friends, and even that he wouldn't give me his last name because I was already recycled.
Recycled? That's just dehumanizing.
Completely. And in the recording, she supposedly reflects on it, saying she felt like an idiot, believing he loved me, putting up with his outbursts, his need to control me, even his jealousy, only for him to treat me like trash in the end.
And hadn't there been reports before this audio surfaced about her blaming him if something happened?
Yes, exactly. Mexican media had previously reported on messages attributed to her where she apparently did just that, explicitly pointed to her ex-partner as a potential threat. So this alleged history, combined with the nature of the crime, provides really strong context for why investigators immediately went down the femicide route.
Which, just to remind everyone, the UN defines as an intentional killing with a gender-related motivation.
Precisely. It forces you to consider this might have been the ultimate act of control, of misogynistic violence stemming from that relationship.
A deeply disturbing possibility. But then the investigation seemed to take another turn, didn't it, towards something bigger?
Yes. A completely different and perhaps even more sinister possibility emerged. A direct link to organized crime. Specifically, the cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, the CJNG.
The CJNG, they're a major player, notoriously violent.
Hugely powerful. An investigator started looking at a man named Ricardo Ruiz Velasco, also known as El Doble R, or El Tripa. He's identified as a high-ranking CJNG member.
And the suspected link to Valeria.
Investigators believe he and Valeria might have been romantically involved for several months leading up to her death.
Okay, so a relationship with a high-ranking cartel figure. What's the alleged motive there? Why would he target her?
Well, the suspicion, according to reports, is that Velasco might have become angry about the gifts Valeria received. She was an influencer, remember. She often got expensive items from followers or brands.
Right, you see that all the time online.
And apparently, just hours before she was killed, Valeria posted a video showing off some kind of luxury item. Investigators are reportedly looking at whether that specific post might have triggered something. Jealousy, maybe? Or perhaps something about perceived disrespect. It's unclear.
That adds a whole different layer of danger. And this is where the U.S. gets involved, right?
Yes, and this is where it gets really interesting internationally speaking. The U.S. Treasury took a pretty significant step. They designated Velasco as a specially designated narcotics trafficker under Executive Order 1459.
Which means?
It means any assets he has in the U.S. are frozen, and American citizens and businesses are totally barred from dealing with him. It's a major sanction, basically saying the U.S. considers him a serious narco-trafficker. And crucially, when they announced this designation, U.S. officials explicitly stated that Velasco was reportedly in a romantic relationship with Márquez at the time she died.
Wow, okay. So the U.S. is directly linking him to her, publicly.
Publicly and officially. But here's the contrast, and it's a stark one.
What are the Mexican authorities saying?
Well, the Jalisco prosecutors, the ones actually handling the murder investigation on the ground, have not confirmed this link. They haven't issued an arrest warrant for Velasco in connection with her murder, nor have they stated they've found direct evidence tying him to it.
So a disconnect between the U.S. intelligence assessment and the local investigation.
A significant disconnect. Reports suggest the Mexican authorities are waiting for more information from the U.S. It really highlights the complexities, the potential political sensitivities, the challenges of investigating powerful cartels within Mexico.
It sounds incredibly frustrating, like potential evidence or leads might be stalled between jurisdictions.
It certainly raises questions about the flow of information and cooperation, and maybe even about the ability or willingness to pursue certain suspects locally, given the cartel's power.
Okay, so we have the ex-boyfriend theory, the cartel leader theory. But there's a third angle investigators are looking at too, right? The idea of hired killers.
Yes, the hitmen theory, which stems directly from the events at the salon. Remember how the men arrived?
The masked man and someone on a motorcycle.
Right. Dennis Rodriguez, a spokesperson for the Jalisco prosecutor's office, pointed out a specific detail. Apparently, the masked man and his accomplice came back to the salon entrance and asked if Valeria was inside.
They asked if she was there.
Yes, which, according to Rodriguez, suggests the person who shot her didn't know her personally.
Ah, okay. I see the logic.
So the prosecutors deduced from this. Cautiously, they said without jumping to conclusions, that this points towards a hired assassin. It was obviously someone who came with a purpose, someone who was paid.
And is that kind of thing common there? Hired killers on motorcycles?
Tragically, yes. Sicarios, as they're often called, operating on motorcycles, are a depressingly frequent feature of violence in that region, especially areas like Jalisco where the CJ&G holds so much sway. It's a known modus operandi.
Which leads to another disturbing potential connection.
Exactly. Authorities are also exploring if Valeria's murder might be linked to another killing that happened just hours earlier nearby in Guadalajara.
Who was the victim there?
A former congressman. And guess how he was killed?
Let me guess. 2 men on a motorcycle.
You got it. Same method. So investigators have to consider if these weren't isolated incidents, but possibly connected hits carried out by the same people or ordered by the same source.
It just keeps getting more complex and darker. This isn't just one tragedy. It feels like part of a much larger, terrifying system.
And that's exactly why we need to zoom out and look at the broader context. Valeria's murder, especially being classified under Femicide protocol, shines a harsh light on the devastating reality of femicide and impunity in Mexico.
Let's just clearly define femicide again.
It's the killing of women and girls, specifically because of their gender. It takes many forms. Intimate partner violence is a big one, but also killings related to honor, dowries, sexual orientation, or, crucially in this context, connections to gangs, organized crime, and trafficking.
And the situation in Mexico is bad.
It's incredibly serious. In 2023, Mexico had the second highest number of femicides in Latin America, fourth highest if you include the Caribbean. We're talking nearly 800 cases recorded in 2024 alone.
Nearly 800 women killed because of their gender.
And what's particularly chilling is that often the perpetrators aren't strangers. They have pre-existing relationships with the victim's family, partners, community members. The threat often comes from within their social circles.
And Jalisco, where Valeria lived and died.
Jalisco has major challenges. Zapopan, where her salon was, might look affluent, but the state itself is one of Mexico's most violent. The CJ&G's presence is deeply entrenched. Homicide rates are high. And this statistic is just staggering. Estimates suggest as many as 90% of crimes in Jalisco state go unreported or uninvestigated.
90%. That's almost total impunity.
It points to a massive breakdown in trust and potentially a deep-seated fear of reporting, especially when cartels are involved. There have even been accusations, which the state attorney's office denies, of links between authorities and the cartels themselves.
It paints a picture where seeking justice feels almost impossible for victims and their families.
It does. Now, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum did pledge a full investigation into Valeria's death, and a security cabinet was deployed. That's positive rhetoric. But women's rights groups are often critical. They point to historically slow responses from law enforcement in these kinds of cases, a perceived lack of urgency or resources dedicated to tackling femicide effectively. There's often a gap between official promises and the reality on the ground.
And Valeria's case wasn't the only one like this recently, was it? You mentioned another live stream killing.
Tragically, no. Just days before Valeria was murdered, another woman, Yesenia Lara Gutierrez, who's actually a mayoral candidate, was also killed during a live stream down at Veracruz.
Another public killing of a woman captured live.
It highlights this terrifying pattern, this convergence of public life, especially online, gender-based violence, and political or criminal violence in Mexico. It shows the escalating danger, particularly for women in the public eye.
So wrapping this all up, Valeria Márquez's death, it's not simple, is it? It's this tangled web.
Absolutely not simple. It's incredibly multifaceted. You've got the deeply personal allegations of abuse from an ex-partner.
Then the shadow of the CJ&G, LRR, those U.S. sanctions creating international intrigue.
And the very plausible theory of professional sicarios, hired killers operating in a region dominated by organized crime and plagued by gender violence.
And despite all these layers, despite the international attention, still no arrests in her specific case. Justice feels very distant.
It does. Her story's become symbolic, hasn't it?
Right.
It's more than just one horrific crime clip that went viral.
Yeah, it resonates as part of this much larger struggle against impunity, against misogyny, against the power of organized crime that seems to permeate so much.
Her story really forces us to look deeper than the headlines, to understand the systemic issues at play.
As we've tried to unpack all this, it leaves us with some really challenging questions, especially for the world we live in now. Consider this. We live so much of our lives online, publicly. How does that intersection, social media visibility, gender-based violence, and these powerful, ruthless criminal groups like the CJ&G, how does that change our basic understanding of safety, of justice?
That's a frightening thought. Valeria's story being captured live really throws that into sharp relief.
And what about the platforms themselves? What responsibility do they have, or digital communities, when a tragedy like this happens right there in plain sight? Is taking down the video enough?
Hmm. That's a huge ethical question. Do they have a role in prevention or in aiding investigations afterwards?
And maybe the biggest question Valeria's story leaves us with is, what does it reveal about the hidden dangers that still exist, even when we feel like we're in a public shared space? How can a digital stage, seemingly safe, become so lethally dangerous?
It's a profound challenge. It tells us we need to look harder, question more deeply, and maybe demand more accountability, both from authorities and from the digital platforms that shape so much of our reality now.